Once upon a tabletop, some adventurers set out to scout a hobgoblin city. Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Rutledge, and this is episode 13 of Colonial Caria Lark's Landing, a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign being played at a local hobby shop called the Devil's Bench. It's nighttime and the adventurers are just leaving the tent of Grubfrub, the bugbear leader of the goblins. They hear sobbing from a small tent to their right. Stor, the goblin monk, goes in with a couple of the others to find out what's going on. Inside, they find a basic brewing setup, as well as Bieta, the abused goblin girl who had been serving drinks. She stops crying as soon as she sees them and tells them that they aren't allowed in here. They ask her a few questions, but she's too busy shooing them out to give them any useful information. Not wanting her to get in trouble, they oblige by leaving the tent. However, once she's in the entryway, Stor gets Balazar, the dragonborn cleric, to heal her bruises. Bieta is equally confused, scared, and grateful. However, when her attention is drawn to Darg, the goblin tied and suspended above the fire in the main tent, she scampers back into her own tent. The adventurers head off to the edge of the goblin encampment to set their own camp. As they go, they see the goblin ilk come out of the big tent and follow them. He's trying very hard to be sneaky, but failing. As the others are setting up their camp, Shen the dwarven ranger goes out into the night. He circles around behind ilk, grabs him, and brings him into the camp. The goblin is terrified and keeps on insisting that they can't see him. After all, Grubfrub doesn't like his scouts to be seen. The adventurers calm him down and ask him some questions. He admits that Grubfrub sent him to keep an eye on them. After being pressed for more, he admits that he was also supposed to steal a gem from Kordak, the half-orc fighter. He says he'll be tied above the fire with Darg if he's unsuccessful. The adventurers make a deal with him, saying that in exchange for information they won't tell Grubfrub that they saw him. They learn from him that Grubfrub has taken over several goblin tribes, and he has a tendency to kill chieftains who won't work for him. Apparently, Bieta is one of the daughters of one such chieftain and is one of Grubfrub's examples. The adventurers let Ilk go and even give him a worthless pretty stone in place of the gem he was supposed to steal. However, they tell him that he works for them now and he agrees as long as they don't tell Grubfrub. He scampers off into the night and the adventurers set their watches. On his third watch, Gilgan, the human mystic, moves away from the rest of the camp. He pulls a bundle out of his pack as well as a bottle of wine. He looks inside the mysterious bundle and up at the moon and drinks from the wine bottle. This has been a full moon ritual of his for a long time. However, this time something unexpected happens. Through his telepathic link with his familiar Pablo, he hears a voice. It says, "I always hated the time of the change." Gilgan asks Pablo what it was, but Pablo has no idea what he's talking about. He thinks he recognizes the voice from long ago. However, nothing else mysterious happens, so he finishes his ritual and returns to his watch. The rest of the night passes uneventfully, with nothing more interesting happening than a group of goblins heading out to the west in the early morning. First thing in the morning, Ilk returns to them. He says that Grubfrub requests their presence. Grudgingly, the adventurers return to Grubfrub's tent, where they see Darg still suspended above the fire and looking the worse for wear. The bugbear orders them to go scout out the hobgoblin city. He says his own scouts have been quite unsuccessful in this. The adventurers don't take kindly to his orders and tell them that they're not under his command. Grubfrub insists that they are because they're part of his alliance. The adventurers say that an alliance doesn't mean he gets to tell them what to do. Grubfrub looks around all the other goblins in the tent, some of which are chiefs, and says that yes it does. He threatens the adventurer that death is the alternative to doing what he says. Still speaking for the group, Kordak says that they will go on this scouting mission, but not because Grubfrub is threatening them. He warns Grubfrub not to threaten them again. Grubfrub says that he would never dream of threatening them. Then he releases the rope that's holding Darg above the fire to point at Kordak. Amid the screams of the dying goblin, he says, "But remember, I don't like my scouts being seen." Kordak doesn't flinch or look away from him. Gilgan sends out a burst of mental energy to quickly put Darg out of his misery. Luckily, no one noticed him doing it. Grubfrub tells him that the hobgoblin city is on the other side of the mountains to the south. He says it's a little more than 2 days' travel away to either side of the mountains. He also says that the hobgoblins don't send their patrols more than 2 days out. Not very happy with the whole situation, the adventurers head out. They decide to follow the mountains to the west and south. As they travel, they talk about their options and their strategies. Gilgan sends Pablo home with a message and to make sure everything is fine. Stor has read quite a lot about hobgoblins in the past and is able to provide some information. They know that they're a very military-oriented race, a much tougher form of goblin. It's debatable whether or not they're more reasonable. The first day of travel through the savanna on the edges of the mountains is uneventful. The second day brings them back into jungle lands. On the third day, as the jungle trees are starting to thin, they hear a noise. It sounds like the tromping of armored feet. Acta, the tiefling warlock, sends her pseudo-dragon familiar, Fluffy, over to investigate. Fluffy reports back that there's a troop of 5 hobgoblins marching south along the edge of the jungle. The adventurers seize upon this opportunity to get some information. They run further south in the jungle and begin to prepare an ambush. Storr goes out as bait. He rudely gets the hobgoblins' attention and then dashes into the jungle. The hobgoblins immediately fall into a defensive formation and follow. Storr leads them right to the ambush site, but as they approach, the hobgoblins stop. They've seen Gilligan standing out in the open and Acta hiding up in a tree. 2 of them move to the front with shields, and 2 more draw bows and come up behind. Even though the positioning isn't perfect, the adventurers spring their ambush. Gilligan uses his psionic powers to raise a wooden wall surrounding the hobgoblins. He leaves a small hole for them to attack through. Acta and Shend begin attacking from up in their trees. Unfortunately, their visibility isn't as good as they'd hoped it would be, and they have some trouble. The hobgoblins with the bows begin shooting at Acta. The others start hacking their way through the wall. Kordak and Balazar rush up, intending to attack through the hole, but one of the hobgoblins has blocked it with his shield. Instead, Kordak gives Balazar a leg up so he can see over the wall. The cleric holds up his hands, releasing a blast of fire that kills some of the hobgoblins and sets the box on fire. After that, the battle ends quickly. The adventurers are careful not to kill the hobgoblin leader. They knock him unconscious so they can question him later. They spend about 2 hours looting the bodies and burying the 4 corpses. Kordak takes the leader's half-plate armor for himself. They bundle up the rest of the equipment, knowing it will be useful for the settlement. Just as they're getting ready to revive the hobgoblin leader, they hear more clanking footsteps. Fluffy is once again sent to investigate. He returns with the report that there's another hobgoblin patrol identical to the last one. They had noticed something and turned for the jungle. Taking their prisoner, the adventurers flee west, deeper into the jungle. Storr and Shend cover their tracks as best they can. A little less than an hour in, they come across a stone loop standing upright. Fairly confident that they aren't being followed, they take some time to examine it. They find some faint runes along the inside edge, but everything is too worn and weathered to be legible. Not wanting to stop this close to the hobgoblins, they continue on for another couple hours. The beat-up hobgoblin leader isn't showing any signs of reviving, so they set camp for the night. In the morning, the hobgoblin is awake. They begin questioning him. Gilligan is able to use his psionic abilities to force some simple answers out of him. In this way, they discover that the city has more than 1,000 hobgoblins in it and no siege weapons on its walls. At this point, the interrogation becomes more violent than most of the party can handle. Storr, Gilligan, Balazar, and Shend head off to examine the stone circle some more. Kordak and Acta remain to try to pry some answers out of their prisoner. Unfortunately, it becomes clear that their prisoner has been trained for this sort of interrogation. They gain no further useful information. In the end, they decided he was no more use to them and they killed him. And that's where this week's session came to an end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and invite your friends to come and watch this series. If you want to support this channel, there's a link for that down in the description, as well as a link to my website where you can buy the chainmail that I make. And that's it for today. Check back in a week to find out what happens next, once upon a tabletop.